Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery podcast. Man, we just made it by 1 second. Hey, good to be here, man. It's good to be with you, Matthew. How's it going today?
It's going well, man. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. We've chatted quite a few times on X in various spaces, so it's cool to actually get to have a one-on-one.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I think you were one of the guys originally that probably beat me up or something, or when I shared my XRP story, and which I don't have anymore. It
Yeah,
doesn't, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, I've definitely learned some lessons, like you guys said,
yeah. You know,
playing around.
for me, it's always just about having constructive dialogue, right? Like I don't ever want to come across like putting somebody down because we all go through that phase, right? And for me personally, I in 2017, 2018, I had probably 20 to 40 different things I was holding at various times, trying to sell, buy, trade, do, all of that. And bear markets will definitely humble you, right? So 2018, I ate a big slice of humble pie, and over the next probably year and a half, basically came to the position I'm at now, which is Bitcoin only. But I also try to not be completely toxic to anybody who's
Sure.
earlier on in their journey, and try to just be constructive and be helpful to people, because I don't think it's all that useful to just go in and kind of yell at each other, and it just scares people out of the room, really, right? You don't actually get any benefit from it. You just make yourself look like an ass. So
Yeah.
hopefully I haven't done that.
No, I mean, I have pretty tough skin, so I don't. I was kind of joking, but I know there's definitely some people in there that were more aggressive
Yeah.
than others. But I just kept showing up anyway. I don't care, man. I'm used to it. But I learned some lessons, along the way, and that's it. And I have this saying. I mean, you get more bees. I don't know if it was you that challenged me on this the other day, but you get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah.
Right, and which I believe is true, and I think someone said, "Well, if you get too much honey, they get all stuck together." And yeah, of course. I don't think it was you that said that, but somebody said that. I'm like, "All right."
I think it was me,
Oh,
actually.
was it? All right,
Yeah, yeah.
cool. Fair enough.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad you're here though, and I'm excited to talk to you about the halving, and we can also talk about, that, like the mindset of, like the maxi uh versus, just other people that are like interested, and then you got other people that are like into meme coin. Like I've learned so much, and but the one thing I think, if you understand, and you can tell me if you agree with this, like everything goes up and down with Bitcoin, like everything, right?
Yeah.
Like I that's what I've noticed. Like I noticed, like I didn't even realize it today, but Bitcoin went down from 72 to 65. And the only reason I knew that is because I got a alert from Coinbase telling me that ETH was on sale for 32. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh shit, ETH's on sale for 32. So I went in and I actually grabbed some BTC at 65 because I grabbed some yesterday at 70. And I'm like, man, this stuff's all over
Yeah.
the place.
Yeah.
Um,
No, there's no shortage of volatility, and I would say that's definitely the case, right? It's the dog and everything else is the tail. And anytime you're seeing geopolitical unrest or liquidity issues broadly, Bitcoin tends to trade risk off before everything else does. And if you look back at March 2020, you see that exactly, right? You saw Bitcoin just tanks overnight because it's the most liquid asset. So people are going to sell that to go into cash because they want cash when times are uncertain. But if you also look at 2020 as an analog for, potentially what could be going on more recently here, anytime you have those issues, it also recovers before everything else does too. So
yeah.
Bitcoin started ripping, before the broader market did back then. And I mean, you're always going to have some sort of geopolitical event going on. Who knows what moves things up and down, but on any given day, which is why if you come to the position that I've pretty much come to, it's look at a 5, 10, 15-year time span, and a lot of this just becomes rounding errors and noise, and it doesn't really even I the only reason that I knew that it had gone down a bit is because I saw a headline when I got home from work. But like I'm at a place now where at the end of the month, I dollar cost average in some or lump sum buy, whatever you want to call it. And I don't trade. I don't do any of that because I think it's the lesson that I've learned is I can't beat the market. I'm not smarter than the algos, and I'm just going to get wrecked if I try to do that. So
Mhm.
I've definitely come to a place of like I said, a big helping of humble pie, and I just stack at the end of the month and try to keep myself in a position where no matter what happens, I'm not ever going to get liquidated, and I'm not ever going to be worried because the price can do exactly what it's done over the past couple of years, go to 70, back down to 16, back up to 70. And for me, I'm just like, this thing is worth more than a million in my eyes. So until we get
Right.
there, it's not even coming out of cold storage for me to buy stuff with it, right? So
Yeah. So yeah, so you have the long term approach. I
mhm,
love that. You know what I was thinking too is, as I said earlier, as I received that message, like I'm trying not to look at it, like because it's just not worth it, unless
yeah,
I want to, buy some, get some more of a position. But I'm gonna shut off the Coinbase notification because I don't even. Yeah, it's kind of
yeah.
funny. Like I wouldn't even have known if it wasn't for that. And you're probably thinking, why is he getting notifications from Coinbase? Right? Like
Well,
that's what.
I I'm not as I guess it's interesting, right? Like there's so many different ways that people can get exposure. And the way that I look at it is truly it's all trade-offs. And I'm not a person who wants to say, oh, you should do it this way. And if it's not done this way, it's not like you, I'm not a purity test guy. That being said, if somebody was to ask me, should I be buying and holding on Coinbase? I would say probably no. But also, if for whatever reason that's what you want to do, I'd say probably not a good long-term thing to be doing, but also if that's what you want to do, it's your money. You have to make your own risk-based decisions. And I think really if people fully understand what they're doing and they still make that decision, well, if you're like a free market person, then you should be going, yeah, sure, like make that decision if that's a decision you want to
So,
make. It's
so for yeah, so for the listeners, I mean, this is what I learned, and I don't have my stuff on Coinbase anymore,
yeah,
except for some Doge that I just keep for whatever reason.
for the
But
memes.
yeah, that's it. That's the only thing I have besides. So you guys would be somewhat proud, I guess. I don't know, but maybe not. But the reality is though, if you're on, and I think there's two sides to this, right, Matt, is if somebody's brand new, like just help them get into it one way or another, right? Like I have my wife download Cash App, get some, buy someone Cash App just to have some. Now she's looking at it, she's in the game, right? Like her
Mhm.
going setting up a wallet and doing all that other stuff. It's just the odds of it are not good, and then she's gonna lose something. It's gonna get ugly,
Yeah.
right? So we all start somewhere. But now that I'm beyond that, I understand how to do all the wallets and all that. So I think the benefit, right, is ultimately so I have control of it. So if somebody shuts down like Coinbase or one of those exchanges, I'm done, right? But if I have mine on a wallet, I still own it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, if you have the private key, yeah. So if you've moved it off of Coinbase and you have like a hardware wallet,
Yeah.
and you have your public key, private key pair, then yeah, you can redeem that. You don't even need the hardware as long as the words are your Bitcoin, basically, right? So if you have those 12 words, and you memorize them, you can go anywhere and um, redeem those coins, basically. So the
Really? So
important
you don't
thing,
even need the Ledger wallet? You don't need the wallet?
no,
Oh, I didn't know
no,
that.
it's yeah. So like if you say you bought it on Coinbase and then you transferred it off to a ledger and you use your ledger to generate your private key, you can redeem or basically recover that from the seed phrase with like a cold card in a whole different nation, which is why you should never put those seed words into anything touching the internet. You shouldn't even point a camera at it because if somebody gets those words, they can redeem that Bitcoin and then move it to a
Didn't
wallet
know
that they
that.
control. Yeah. So
I
that's
didn't know
actually
that.
in 2018. There was a pretty popular scam that actually got me, and this is where I really learned this lesson the hard way. Unfortunately, was I had my Bitcoin on a Trezor wallet, right, and it had like a software update for their user interface on desktop. and I went to try to download that and ended up accidentally going to a website that looked the exact same, but the difference was it asked you to put your private keys in, and I really didn't understand that relationship at the time. So I entered those private keys into that website, and all the Bitcoin that was on that hardware device was swiped, and there, you can't get it back. It's gone forever. So yeah, it's important to understand those things, because self custody is something that has to be taken seriously, right? It's like it both gives you a lot of responsibility, but with that responsibility comes the consequences of responsibility, right? It's not like you just call your bank up and say, "Hey, fraud center," right? Like
Yeah.
the whole point is there is no bank to call, so there's trade-offs for that, right? And the trade-offs are you have to really know what you're doing, and that's why I think for if you have your 70-year-old grandma and it's her first exposure to it, it's probably not best for you to say, "Hey, grandma, you're not a real Bitcoiner if you don't get a cold card tomorrow and you know set it up that way." Like, you're going to have to hold that person's hand, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. I would say also, though, for your grandma, if she does want to get exposure, she probably shouldn't buy it on Coinbase and just sit there either, because there's risk to that, right? And that's why there's so many cool offerings and other people that are way better at explaining that side of things than I am. I think probably the best out there that I'd recommend checking out is BTC Sessions. He's got so many good videos for custody and how to do it in a sovereign way that's I
Well,
would say minimized risk.
well, well, and we're going to get into the halving in a minute, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So Tuesday, I didn't realize that somebody could get your access without your wallet. I thought I thought they had to go together. So that's something new I learned that I just learned. I did not know that.
Just the
So
words. If it's single sig, anyways. Yeah.
single. Okay, got it. So good to know. So that's what multi-sig means, is you need both, or what is that like when?
Multi-sig, think of it like you have multiple keys to open a safe, right? And in order to open a safe, say you need 2 out of the 3 keys. If you have any 2 of those 3, you can open the door. If you only have 1 out of the 3, you can't open the door to move the Bitcoin, right? And you can do 2 of 3, 3 of 5, 5 of 7, so on and so forth. And then, if you want to really get down that rabbit hole, once again, there's trade-offs, but the arguably, I guess, most robust way to protect your Bitcoin would be geographically distributed multi-signature address. So that means you have, let's just go back to the 2 of 3 example. You have 2 out of you have the 3 signatures, or 3 keys, right, to open, and you geographically put those in different locations, so that if you've had a robbery, house fire, whatever, and one of those keys gets lost, you still have the other 2 elsewhere in different locations, and you can go recover, reset it up with a new do a new setup, move it to a new wallet, do whatever you have to do. And then there's companies that offer options to basically do this with them, where they hold one of those 3 keys for you. Like Unchained does it, I believe
Mm,
Swan does it. They have, like, basically they call it a vault normally. Or you can set it up yourself if you're savvy enough. But it's also one of those things where if you don't really know what you're doing and you go to try to set up a multi-sig, well, then if you've messed that up, you're more
yeah,
likely to
you're
actually
not
lose
going
it
to get it.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah,
So once again, trade-offs for everything. There is no right answer, one size fits all. It's just, I think it's important for people to understand what the options are out there and how they work, so that they can then make their own decision on how they want to hold, you know, their wealth, basically, or whatever portion of their wealth is in Bitcoin.
that makes a lot of sense. Well, and before we
Yeah.
jump into the halving, do you think grandma, like you talked about different options, but do you think grandma should be jumping into the ETF?
I think it depends, right? If grandma has a retirement account that can't be moved out,
Mm,
or if you have an account
yeah,
that can't be
smart.
moved
Yeah.
out. Like for me, for example, I have a retirement account that I can't pull money out of without a tax burden, right? And so it's the only way that I can get exposure with that specific component of my assets. So I'm not, once again, I'm not a purity test guy. There's trade-offs, right? I understand that I don't actually have control over those coins, but if you give me like the 20 different Fidelity like bond options or or the ETF. Well, yeah, I'd rather have the ETF than like, okay, do you want 40% 10-year bonds and 60% 30-year? Like, no, I don't want any of that, right? I'd rather have the ETF than that if you have to pick between that binary. And once again, going back to somebody, if you're not tech savvy and you just want exposure and you're probably not going to even unfortunately live long enough maybe to see Bitcoin truly do what it's capable of, then I it's better that than no exposure in my
Yeah.
opinion. But there's definitely some maxis out there that would criticize me for that position. So it's, once again, it's a spectrum. There's no right answer, I don't think.
Yeah, some of the maxis are pretty hardcore, but that it's all good, man. Hey, everybody has the
No, and
opportunity to be the way they want. I mean, that's their choice, right?
yeah, and I'm
So,
closer to that side of the spectrum than not, right? So I just
yeah, I'm in the middle.
fair enough.
But I've learned some lessons. I've lost some money recently playing around with some, meme coins in some of those rooms and getting excited and buying some stuff, and then the next day you log in and you're like, holy cow, this was
Yeah,
19 cents yesterday. Today it's 5 cents. Like
yeah,
that's a pretty significant drop, right?
yeah. And
Um,
we don't have to go super deep
yeah,
into
we
that,
won't.
but for lack of a better term, like these things have been happening in the space since 2017, the ICO craze. It's like, if you've been around for a while, same thing with all the DeFi stuff. Now it's meme coins. Like, there's always this new hot topic, right? And the pattern is always the same. And if you've been around for a while, like I have, like I said, I started getting interested again in 2016 and have pretty much looked at something adjacent to the space daily ever since. And have been basically Bitcoin only since pretty much 2020. But that being said, you start to just see these patterns, right? And it's the same pattern. It's build a hype cycle. The insiders get the coins early. They dump on retail. And then eventually you run out of new people coming in. The hype is kind of gone from the project, and the insiders will liquidate the last of their position. And then it's on to the next thing that gets pumped. And I've seen that happen. It's got to be in the hundreds of times now at this point. Because if you go back and you look at all those names from 2018, all those different projects, you know, they haven't even been mentioned, and their price in Bitcoin is like zero, basically, right? Like, they don't even have the liquidity to for you to move in and out of anymore. And I think a lot of these meme coins, if you look back 2-3 years from now, it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's why some people definitely have difficulty, I would say, keeping their cool talking about it, because they've seen it so many times. It's just like, to them, they're sitting there going, "Oh my God, how can you people not see this?" But if you're new coming in, it's like this shiny casino, right? And you're going, "Ooh, man, I can hit the slots. I can."
100x.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Someone posted his wallet, legit. Somebody posted his wallet or a screenshot. I mean, who knows? Maybe he just made it up. Might have been even fake, but
Yeah,
it showed like he invested $3,000 and now it's worth $40,000. And you're like,
hmm,
okay, I want that, right? Like, let's,
yeah. Who
I think
doesn't?
that's, yeah, right. And so it gets you excited. And anyway, that's a different conversation. Hey, what's,
Yeah.
tell us what macro minutes means before we jump into the halving.
So, are you familiar with the what is it, Dunning-Kruger curve, the peak of Mount Stupid, and then you go into like the trough of despair,
No,
and then you rise out of it?
no, I'm not, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I would say I made the handle, and I've kept it. But I would say I made the handle at the peak of Mount Stupid, which is basically when you think you know a lot about something, when the reality is you don't even know that you don't know
Mm,
anything, right? And I've always been interested in like macroeconomics, what's going on in the world, all of that. And I made the handle a couple of years ago because I was like, oh, like I could start writing about this, right? And then the more you go, the more you try to learn. And if you want to actually write something truthful, you have to do research, right? And so I go in, I start doing research to try to write stuff, and then it's like, wait, what is that? Holy shit. Okay. And then you just keep going and going and going. And then um, I would say I'm on the rise now, coming out of the kind of trough of despair. But basically, I made it because I originally thought that my account and my purpose on X was basically going to be talking about that kind of stuff. And truthfully, it's not where my primary interest is. My primary interest has been Bitcoin for the last 5-6 years, and energy stuff, right? So that's my show on Thursdays that I host in the mornings, is focused on Bitcoin mining and energy, because I'm a facilities engineer. I work with power plants on a daily basis, and that's what's fascinated me since I was a little kid. And so it's turned in that direction, and I'm just doing what I'm actually interested in and what I know about, which is what I should have done from the get-go. But I haven't ever changed the account name, because I just wanted it to kind of be as a constant reminder for myself of, you may think you know what you're talking about, but you probably don't. And so that's why I've left it.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. So let's get into it, into the mining side. I mean, so what are your thoughts? I mean, going forward, how does the halving affect mining? Like, I didn't know much about it until I jumped in here, and then
Yeah.
ironically at was, I forget, it was a birthday party, and somebody they're my I don't even know how he's connected to me, but he's somehow he shows up to the family events. We'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a whole mining setup in his garage. I had no idea, and he's got like he invested like $30,000 into this mining gear, and he said he's making like $700 a month right now, and so I'm like, that's cool, but how does the halving affect that, right? So
Yeah, I was about to say, soon to be what, 350.
yeah, so when does that stop making sense, I guess, right? You're the expert at this, and then we'll
So
explain the halving to everybody.
yeah, let's look at it big picture first, right? So when Satoshi made the code or wrote the code for Bitcoin, one of the key things, key insights, I would say, key inventions, right, that makes Bitcoin what it is it is literally digital scarcity, right? Well, what is the mechanism to actually enforce digital scarcity? How do you bring that into fruition, right? And what he did was, he literally, it's a predetermined mathematical code where every 4 years the amount of new supply coming into the market is cut in half, right? So that, think of it like you've got a deck of cards, there's 21 million of them, and in the first 4 years, you're dealing out a certain amount. The next four, you're dealing out. You just eat so like right now, we're about to hit, I think it's 93% total of the
It's like
entire
19
supply.
million or something, right? It's up there.
Yeah. So like 19 million out of 21 million, right? So that 19 million is already mined. It's out in the market to be bought and sold. So from the next 140 years, only 2 more million comes to market, right? And half of that is going to be the next 4 years, and so on and so forth, right?
Did you
It's
say 140 years? That's how much, or 4 years?
Yeah, so 2142 is basically when new issuance
Oh wow.
effectively is zero. But long before then, to the point that you just brought up, the first epoch, they call them epochs, right? So the first 4 years, the first epoch was 50 Bitcoin per block. And then the second, it went to 25, then 12 and a half. Right now we're at 6.25. And then probably around the 20th here, we're going to go down to 3.125 per block. But that's only the subsidy. That's not necessarily the total reward. So that's the guaranteed amount if you mine a block, that you are guaranteed that as the minimum, plus whatever fees you get for that block. So if it's a high fee block because of who knows what, BRC20s, ordinals, all the stuff that's going on right now, market activity, and fees are high, you might end up having more fees than block subsidy. So that's already happened a couple times where there was more than six and a half Bitcoin basically, was just generated by fees in one single block. And then you also had the subsidy. So it's subsidy plus fees equals total block reward. And when you're mining, you're, most of the time contributing to a pool. And whatever your percentage of the total hash is of that pool is how it calculates
So
your payout
so
daily. So
so is it, so just so I'm, because I'm not clear. So is it every day a certain amount is mined, and then all the miners are together kind of fighting, I guess, to get the mine, to get access to it?
so the best way to think about it, in my opinion, is literally on 10-minute chunks, because that's on average how long it takes for a new block to be mined, right? You have these difficulty adjustments that happen every 2 weeks, to make sure that block time is held relatively constant. It's a probability thing. So you could find 4 blocks in a row within 30 seconds and then none for 3 hours from a network standpoint. But on average, over a 2 week period, it's going to be about 10 minutes. And then if you ever hear somebody talk about the difficulty adjustment, that is where the network automatically every 2 weeks adjusts how difficult it is for a miner to solve a block. And it does that based on the total hash rate on the network. So if that total hash rate goes up and we're finding blocks every, let's say, 9 minutes and 50 seconds, then the difficulty is going to adjust up to recalibrate that. Think of it like a governor, right, on an engine. It's like, whoa, we're overspeeding here. We got to slow down a bit. And then vice versa, if you have like the China mining ban that happened a couple of years ago, right? The difficulty tanked off because all those computers were turned off. All that hash drops off the network, and then blocks are coming in much slower, like 11 or 12 minutes. And so then difficulty adjusts back down so that you get, on average, roughly 10-minute block time. And every 10 minutes, whoever finds that block is getting that subsidy plus the rewards for aggregating transactions and facilitating those, right? So if you go to like, are you familiar with mempool.space? I think that would be a good thing to look at
No,
real quick.
no, probably not. I'm not, but I mean, I don't want to get too into the weeds, which I think we're starting to go into the weeds a bit.
Sure.
So like for this guy's name's Albert. He said he doesn't do anything. He said the computers just run
Yeah.
and they do everything. So explain that, like, because you're saying every 10 minutes you have to solve a problem, you have to, but he said, I'm
Well,
not doing anything, just the computers are there running, doing it, right?
yeah. So I'm describing, it's kind of like saying the engine in your car, every time the cylinder comes up, there's an explosion and it goes down. I'm describing that process. And when you're driving your car, like you're not sitting there thinking about every cylinder
Yeah,
fire in the engine, right? Like the
right.
computer is, yeah, it's doing that. So I'm describing, I guess, the technical of what's actually happening. Now, if you're somebody who is just having your miner do its thing, you're just running the software, right? You download the software, you set it up, the ASIC is hashing for you, and then you point that hash power at a pool. The pool says, okay, great, you're, I don't know, this percentage, therefore on average we're going to pay you out this much. And that's what your family member is doing, right? They just have those computers, they're running them, they're probably pointing it at a pool, and then that pool is paying them out based on the total hash they contribute to the pool. But the halving will definitely reduce, at least in the short term, the dollar revenue for them, because Bitcoin price hasn't doubled over the past, whatever week or two. So like,
Yeah.
um,
So initially it'll go down, but then it will catch up, right? Because the price should double.
in dollar terms, sure. And so this is where it can get a little bit, I guess, arbitrary or difficult to understand if you're brand new, because the mining should be understood in Bitcoin terms, in my opinion, because if you're if you want to make the calculation of, oh, does it make sense for me to mine or not? Well, if you spend in today's Bitcoin terms a certain amount of Bitcoin to buy a miner and to pay for your electricity and do all that stuff, but then Bitcoin over the next 4 years, like 4, 5, 6 X's, even more, who knows? Um, there's an argument to be made that depending on your electricity cost, you probably won't ever make that Bitcoin back, and it makes more sense for you to just buy the
Mm.
Bitcoin outright and not mess with mining at all. And for the most part, if you're not under, let's just say, 6 cents a kilowatt hour, like you probably shouldn't even be looking at mining, to be honest, because you're competing with guys who have 2 cent a kilowatt hour or even free energy. Like they're in some cases maybe even getting paid to take it, because they're doing like methane mitigation or something for someone, right? So they're helping somebody with their emissions. They're paying them to take their methane, and then they're just mining the Bitcoin with that energy. You can't compete with that if you're mining in your garage paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour, right?
Well,
Um,
he's lucky because he's in a town that actually has their own power, so he doesn't pay a delivery,
mm,
which I could never get away with that because I do pay, I think maybe even more than 12 cents. I think it's like 14. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I get that point that you made about the cost of energy. So let's explain the halving. Let's for people, like, how do you, like, because we want, you said we're going to break it down in a way that anybody can understand it.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Sorry. I thank you for pulling me back, because
that's all right. It's
I'm a
good.
nerd, so I want to go down
Yeah.
into the weeds, right? So, I would just say, think of it like the the Fed has their FOMC meetings, right? And they're saying, oh, we're gonna, you know, pick this interest rate or that interest rate because the wind's blowing this direction today, right? And
What's
like
an
they,
FOMC? I don't even know if I don't know what an FOMC meeting is.
um,
So,
it's
but
basically it's when the Fed comes together like on a monthly basis and says we are going to raise or lower interest rates, right?
got it.
They're setting monetary policy. They're basically saying we're going to control our bond buying and selling, and that's what influences like your 30-year mortgage rates, right?
Sure.
If the Fed raises rates, your 30-year mortgage rate goes up. If they cut rates, it goes down. But what that's really doing for the dollar system is it's kind of there's a bunch of in the weeds arguments here, but just to keep it simple, it's basically when interest rates are low, that's where you see all the Jerome Powell money printer memes, right? That would happen in 2020, where your mortgages were like people were getting 2 point something percent interest rates, right? And that's where that monetary policy is basically, free and loose. We're just adding money into the system, flushing it into the system. Um, Whereas Bitcoin doesn't have that. There is no third party person. There's no oracle that gets consulted. It is mathematically predetermined. Every 4 years, the amount of new Bitcoin coming in gets cut in half. And so if you look at supply and demand, right, doesn't matter what happens to demand, supply is going to be the same and it's predetermined. And that's the thing that's like kind of crazy for people to wrap their head around sometimes, is like, wait, so you're telling me like gold, for example, if the gold price goes up, say it doubles, you're going to get a whole bunch of gold miners that are going to go, heck yeah, man, let's get out there and let's dig some gold out of the ground, right? Well, Bitcoin's not like that. You can turn all the computers on in the world you want, and then Bitcoin goes, oh, we have more miners here. Yep, we're going to make it harder to find a new block now. That's going to stay at 10 minutes, right? And so the network auto adjusts, and then every 4 years, that reward, once again, it just gets cut in half. And there is nobody that can do anything about that. It is preset, predetermined, and you can actually go. Let me message you this right now. You may want to share it because I think it's a really good graphic to show people.
Right.
There's actually on Glassnode.
Where are you messaging me?
I'm going to send this to you on X really quick.
All right.
So I don't know if you can share this or not, or
yeah,
maybe
sure
just tweet it out. But in orange here on this, that's the issuance of Bitcoin coming out. And you can literally see perfectly every 4 years that new supply coming onto the market getting cut in half.
Let me do this, see if it lets me. Wait, no, that's not it. This one. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, so you see this orange graph here. The black is price and the orange is issuance of Bitcoin. So you can see in that first period when the network was small and when ASICs didn't exist, or Bitcoin ASICs anyways, it was people just mining with like GPUs, CPUs, stuff like that. The hash rate was moving around a lot, so the issuance was a lot more unstable. Then you start to get more and more miners coming onto the network, the hash rate's growing and growing, and then you start to see the new supply stabilizing. But then you see clearly 2013, 2017, 2020, and now very soon 2024, you can see that immediate just step change down. That is going to happen again here in just a couple weeks. And your subsidy, which is the new Bitcoin coming into the market, just gets cut in half. It's that simple.
That's a really good graph showing the price, huh? Look at the price increase there with the black, huh?
Yeah, so that's your log price. price in log terms, and the supply issuance. And you know, there's a bunch of people that would make an argument that the halving has no impact there. And then you have some people who make the argument that the halving is everything. And I'd say I fall somewhere in between. I think the halving does have an impact, but it's also not everything, especially with the ETFs coming out now and them just buying up so much. But what you want to look at with that, right, is look at how much the ETFs buy on a daily basis versus how many new coins come in on a daily basis. And there's your like just a very simple like supply and demand. The price is the only relief valve for that pressure, right? And so when you hear people talking about this on a regular basis, I think a lot of people just don't understand how scarce Bitcoin is and where it's
So,
potentially going.
so how many coins come in? Like how many can be mined a day?
So are we talking right now?
Yeah, right now it's there's only a certain amount you can get every day, right? But then the ETFs are buying. Are they buying as soon as it comes in? Is that what's happening? They're being bought by
Yeah.
somebody?
Well, I mean, not necessarily. The miner can choose whether they want to sell it or not, right? So when you mine it, let's say you're the miner, so you have your ASIC is mining and you win a block, and so your block reward gets paid out to whatever address you want it to pay
Got
out
it.
to. And that address now has the let's just for simple sake say it's got 6 Bitcoin in it because that's the current subsidy. Ignore the fees for now just to keep it simple. You decide, well, am I going to keep that or am I going to go to the market and sell it? Well, you're probably at some point going to have to sell some of it because you got to pay for your electricity or your maintenance or whatever. You got to buy food. You got to do something, right? If that's your income stream, you're going to save some of it probably and sell some of it probably. And right now, once again, keeping it simple, about 900 Bitcoin come onto the market from miners, new Bitcoin per day.
Wow.
Um, so just 900. And so if you look, once again, you go look at those ETF flows right now, and they're buying up in some cases thousands in a day. And so once again, if the supply is fixed, that does not change. You can't change it. It's 900 a day, and it's about to be 450 a day,
So
right, on
so
average.
help us understand. I know you're limited on time too, right? Like you have a hard stop at 5. Is that accurate or
Yeah, I can go a little past that.
okay? So basically if it's fixed, why is the price so volatile? Like Dale, like it just went from 72 today all the way down to 65.
Yeah,
That's
well, and that's where once again there's um, what is volatile versus what is not. The issuance is not volatile. That's very steady, just to your point, right? But the world is a volatile place. The dollar is a volatile thing. There's geopolitical stuff going on. There's people living their lives, doing things on a day-to-day basis. And, just like, gold recently has been moving up and down quite a bit, right? Now it's a much larger thing. It's 10 trillion plus market cap, so it doesn't move percentage wise as much as Bitcoin does because Bitcoin's only $1 trillion asset. But you know nothing is not volatile because the world is volatile. So if you have a fixed thing, that fixed thing is just giving you a it's like a mirror, right? If the
mm,
world is volatile and you have this fixed mirror there, well, yeah, you're going to see volatility
yeah.
projected back at you. And that's kind of what Bitcoin does, in my opinion, right? So if it moves up or down, it's the best thing to do is like March 2020. And this is where I think people get tripped up, right? They look at the price and they're like, oh my God, like, I don't know about this Bitcoin thing. And it's like, once you've been in for a while and you actually realize what the real signal is, it's like, well, wait a second. No, the world is so volatile, but you go back and you look at that chart, the issuance chart is just super steady, doesn't care what's happening in the world, doesn't care about COVID, doesn't care about the US government, doesn't care about anything. It's just half, 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 right? And that's your monetary policy for this asset versus the Fed has their FOMC meeting and their tea leaves and, oh, inflation's going to do this or it's going to do that. Maybe we'll print, maybe we won't. What's the US government going to do? Where are they going to spend? Like trying to keep up with all that stuff is maddening. And then you go and you look at this and it's just like, nope, just cuts in half, cuts in half, cuts in half,
Just keeps
900 a
going.
day, 900 a day, 900 a day. And people get freaked out about all this other stuff, But this to me is like what makes the system beautiful, and it's what people really should be focused on, because once you focus on that and you realize, oh my God, this thing is so stable. It's got 99.999% uptime. It doesn't care what happens in the world. It never goes down. It just keeps chugging along. And the phrase that you hear people say in the Bitcoin community is TikTok next block, right? It the
Well,
machine
I mean,
doesn't
but
care.
you just said it never goes down, but it does go down.
It doesn't go down
Oh, the system
like
doesn't go
a
down.
power outage, right? The
Got it.
lights are always on.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas like, Solana recently was just down. How many times have they been down,
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, and that's kind of the point when Bitcoiners are like, this is what's important versus like a lot of this other stuff to people like myself is mostly just noise, because it's like, well, when you have digital granite here, to use Michael Saylor's analogy, you can build a lot on that, right? Versus digital quicksand, which is what a lot of these other projects are. Like, sure, maybe you can make a quick buck on it if you're lucky. Most people are not. They're going to get wrecked. And you can't build anything lasting. Like, how does that help humanity? And so that's where I think a lot of Bitcoiners get maybe caught up, is like, oh my God, these meme coin guys are, they're saying they're going to help humanity. It's like, I don't think they are. I think they're just saying we're a digital casino, and it's like, you can't compare apples and oranges. So, anyways, I know, kind of went maybe on some tangents, but I hope
Oh, it
at
was
least
good.
the
I think you did a good. I think you did a good job, and I definitely learned some stuff here, and the listeners as well. I'm gonna go back and listen to it again. I actually interviewed a guy named Brian Esposito earlier today, and he does his space is security tokens.
hmm,
And so I learned something about that too, because I didn't realize security tokens are regulated. That's really the only difference between what he does in like a meme coin is his stuff is regulated and is right. Like that's at least the way I understood it. So,
yeah, and I
I'm just learning. Like to me, I want to learn all this stuff, right? Like I want to know. I would say if anything, I probably become more of a maxi, but I'm like the nice guy maxi, and I realize everything goes with Bitcoin, but at the same time, I want to know as much as I can about the space.
yeah, and,
So
and I think if I could, I guess, hop back on my soapbox really quick, why I think it's important compared to everything else is I really see Bitcoin is like, we're trying to fix the world monetary system, and
yeah,
then everything else is like, oh, we can do this cool thing with equities or securities or whatever, and it's like, for me, I'm not even going to sit here and say that none of that stuff will ever have a use case in the future, because I don't know. I don't have the bandwidth to look at it. I literally don't comment on it. For me, it's like the monetary system is so broken that causes so many problems that I'm going to be laser focused on this one thing, try to learn it as best I can, and help other people understand it with the spaces that I hold. Because to me, that's it. It's kind of like it's the 90s and we're talking about the early internet is being built, and I see this as like, oh my God, everything's going to move onto the internet. People just don't realize it yet. And then you have people talking about, yeah, but IBM has this intranet that's really cool, and like IBM can do this between their two computers. And I'm sitting there going, guys, this is a globally distributed, like decentralized system that anybody can use whenever they want from anywhere. And you're sitting there telling me about how like IBM is going to allow you to play Pong between two computers in a building. And it's just like, it's not the same order of magnitude. We're comparing two different things. You're
sure.
comparing gold to Apple stock. They just don't compare. And so for me, I don't put any energy towards it, but I also don't like
So I think,
trash it all that
to
much.
your point, I mean, and I understand your point of view. I think to the average person, though, I feel like it's good to get the distinctions between what things are like, because most people just think it's all the same. I mean,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah, if you're
talk
new,
to
for
20
sure.
people a day, and 18 of them have no idea what Bitcoin is. Like
I
someone
agree.
told me, yes, I saw. As a matter of fact, someone told me yesterday, saw a Bitcoin ATM. I'm like, they have Bitcoin. I didn't even know they had Bitcoin ATMs. They told me where there's one in Whitensville. I'm like, really? But still no idea what it is. So yeah, I think so. Again, for me, it's more curiosity,
Uh,
understanding it.
just to FYI, I don't have a hard stop now, so it's too windy, so we're not gonna
All
actually
right,
do the
cool.
road
Yeah,
today.
we can
So
go for a couple more if you
yeah,
want, man. It's good conversation. I enjoy it. I can see you getting a little heated here at the end as
no,
we
no, 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 not
start
at all.
talking about other stuff. It's
I
good.
Ah.
It's but
No,
it's,
I think, for me, I enjoy conversation with anyone, and I think I have a couple of buddies that are personal friends that I've known for a long time that are into a bunch of other stuff that I'm not, and I'm always like, we have conversations with them. Like my friend's sitting there talking about like this and that NFT and stuff like that, and I'm like, dude, I can't I can't do this right now. But
yeah.
at the same time, like I've had a bunch of conversations with them. Like I'm not going to sit there and say what you're doing with your money is like um I don't know,
Mhm.
wrong. It's literally, if you believe in free choice, then do whatever you want. It's the main thing that I would say I probably take issue with is when you have people getting in a public square and then advocating for something that they're an insider on and they know they're going to dump it
Mm.
on people. That's where I would start to take issue, right? Because it's like you're effectively scamming people and you know that you're scamming people and you're still getting out here and you're doing it. And there's still a lot of that going on right now, which is another thing where it's like if you hear Saylor talk about this, right? He talks about there's only one thing that he feels comfortable as a publicly traded company CEO talking about, which is Bitcoin, because it's a commodity. So it's like you can say to somebody, yeah, I think gold is a good thing for you to own. And there's no like moral issue with that, right? Because it's a, it's a rock, right? And this is not to downplay it, but it's a digital rock. Like that's what you need to compare it to. It's the internet. If you could own a piece of the internet, that's what it is. Versus if a lot of these other projects are probably best classified as a security. And I know that the SEC is going after some of this stuff now, and we'll see what actually happens here. But I would be nervous even advocating for something else if I did believe in it, just because of that reason. So
Yeah.
I think people should be more careful than they are, because the SEC has gone after people in the past for pushing tokens that they were insiders on. I think a lot of people got sued over like SafeMoon and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I can
um,
see that.
that would be the only thing I would say, as someone who's also
What's
publicly facing. Just be careful. Definitely don't pump
what's
anything.
so I did watch I watched a video with what's his face? Peter Schiff, the gold guy, and I can't remember the other guy's name. I know none of the Bitcoin guys like him. I can't think of his name right now. The other
I think
guy.
people like to hate him.
Yeah, I
It's
can't
one
even
of
think
those
of
things,
who is he again? I mean, I didn't know who he was. I thought he did all right. I thought it was a good debate. I thought he won the debate, but I feel like Peter Schiff is just like I don't. He just like takes his position and that's it. He don't want to hear anything else, right? Like,
Yeah.
why are so many people like that? Like, why are they just like I?
I think for him it's marketing for his gold funds, right?
Is it?
Like that's just my opinion.
Yeah, because he seems like a smart guy, and so what he's saying sometimes doesn't really make sense.
I agree. Well, it's also interestingly, like you do get these people who are like high IQ. They've been they are hard set in a position, and they feel that they're right, and they're just really not open to anything else. And like I think it could be maybe an ego thing. It could also just be uh like as we age we lose neuroplasticity, right? So you get stuck in these things. You're the gold guy and you're
That's
you
it.
know maybe some like mushrooms and therapy and he would come out of that. But if he doesn't do it, then he's probably just going to be the gold guy till he passes away.
Closed-minded. Well, yeah. Honestly, it's funny when you say the I mean, I think it probably does have to do with marketing. Like that he's
Hmm.
gone all in on it, and that's it. He doesn't want to hear it, and it's smart for him in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you are the gold guy and you've got a market of people that wants to buy
Yeah,
gold, I mean, just lean in, I guess.
yeah,
And if he's clearly been fairly successful, so can you even blame him for it? And I think also it's like, I don't know, for me as a Bitcoiner, if you've been in some of my shows that I've held with people, like I want to talk to people who are building stuff and who are like pushing things forward. And I think it's kind of a waste of time to worry too much about like the Peter Schiffs of the world who are probably just never going to get it. And it's like, if the Wright brothers spent all their time trying to convince people who said we'll never fly that no flight is possible instead of building an airplane, well, then we would have never got off the ground, right? They weren't arguing with people. They were out there in Kill Devil Hills in North Carolina trying to build planes and jumping off the hill until they eventually got it figured out. And it's like, those are the people I want to talk to,
I don't know how old you are, but I remember in 2000 when all the computers were switching from 1999 to 2000. Everybody thought there was this big,
Yeah.
all the computers in the world were going to just shut down. And I don't know if you remember that. You might
I
be
was in
younger.
4th grade.
Yeah, yes, you were a lot younger than me, but yeah, I remember that, and it was like this absurd thing. It seems like there's some of that still going around.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about. Oh, there was something else that was just on my mind, and it slipped me. See, that's my neuroplasticity thing you just said. All right, what didn't we talk about that we should have talked about?
I would say one thing that's a misconception that I've heard a lot recently that I'm trying to just maybe spread some awareness on is the whole energy use FUD around Bitcoin. A lot of people, I think, see it as like a bad thing, or have been at least convinced for whatever reason that energy usage itself is inherently a bad thing, and that's one of the main things that I try to address on the show that I host on Thursdays. Is energy usage is the only thing that elevates the quality of life of human beings. You have to use more energy if you want to improve your quality of life. That is the only thing that reliably will predict whether or not a society has a higher quality of life. You have to look at energy expenditure per capita. That is what matters. And Bitcoin, the technology, and mining itself will help to facilitate the build out and management of more energy production. And it's just such a powerful thing if you live in that world and understand how groundbreaking it can be. That I think it's just a underappreciated, under talked about thing that a lot of people just, maybe it's lack of exposure, lack of interest, I'm not sure. But all I ever hear about when it comes to energy for the most part is like negative stuff with Bitcoin. Or you hear people talking about like trying to justify like, oh, well, yeah, we use a lot of energy, but it's green energy. And it's like the framing is backwards, in my opinion. It should be framed as, no, we use a lot of energy. That's a good thing. We want to use more and we want to build more because that's going to improve everybody's quality of life. So that's something that anytime I'm allowed to, I will happily talk about.
Yeah. So I think if you look at my understanding is the people the people that are green, the green people, they feel energy will it creates pollution, right? Which then hurts the environment, which then hurts the ozone layer and et cetera, right? That's like the argument behind the energy.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely hear that. And I think there's a few ways to approach it. One is, you could just go head on into is CO2 really a pollutant? Um, I probably shouldn't go on that tangent right now because I'll keep you here for another hour and I'll probably get way too nerdy. So I won't do that to you.
we don't have another hour anyway, but
Yeah.
it's all good.
But no, I would just say it's there. As you go up the energy density spectrum, you go from burning wood to burning charcoal to burning coal to oil, natural gas, and then nuclear, right? It gets cleaner. And so the US cleaned up our emissions by moving from coal to natural gas, and we were moving to nuclear. It stalled for a bit. My hope is that we'll continue moving in that direction. And so as you get more energy dense sources, you actually end up getting more energy and it's cleaner. So even if you're concerned with CO2 emissions, the best way to solve that is to actually generate more energy from more energy dense sources, in my opinion. And that's what the US has done. If you look at the air quality in a lot of our cities now versus 25 years ago, it's way improved. And that's because we just burn less coal.
Yeah, that's good. I did not know that. So All right. Well, listen, I just want to say thank you for being on today. It was fun connecting with you. Glad we get to connect off the app. All I ever see is your image of the
Yeah,
double
MM.
M. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And so tell people what's the best way to get in touch with you. Hold on, I gotta fix my
Yeah,
headphones.
so my handle on X is Macro Minutes. I'm on Spaces pretty regularly, and I host a show on Thursday mornings from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. It's a Bitcoin mining and energy show. We try to get energy professionals and Bitcoin miners on to talk all things Bitcoin mining and energy. That is a fairly nerdy show, fair warning. So we definitely go in deep, but also one of the co-founders of the Bitcoin Daily. So the Bitcoin Daily handle hosts Bitcoin shows every morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, and we cover a wide range of topics. We have 101 on Wednesdays. We have Bitcoin and energy on Thursdays. We have like a humanitarian show on Fridays. We have the like TradFi, I guess, ETFs, macro, that kind of stuff on Saturdays. And then Sundays, Craig hosts his Philosophy Sunday. And then after that, there's a Women in Bitcoin hour, which is held by some of the women on our team. And that's mostly catered to having just women on stage, so that they can talk about their, unique angles to Bitcoin. And then Mondays, there's meetup Mondays. So if you're looking to try to find like a meetup in your local area, they have a lot of meetup hosts that come on and talk on Mondays about where they're hosting meetups, how to host a meetup if you want to host one. And then Tuesday, I also co-host a show with Weston BT Cosmonaut, where we talk to creators. So like BTC sessions. We had Mandrick on recently. Just a lot of the people that you see creating a lot of content on X that's Bitcoin focused. And then back to Wednesday, it's just 101. So I would say if anybody is trying to learn more basic stuff, just try to understand how things work and what's going on and why, the 101 show is probably the best place to start on Wednesdays. So yeah, if you want, I'll just send you the handle if you want to retweet that out. That's probably the best place for people to start.
Yeah, we'll drop it. We'll definitely drop it in the show notes. So that's on daily at 8 a.m. Eastern time. It starts, right? It's 8 to 10 Eastern on X.
Yep,
It's called
on Spaces.
Yeah, Spaces, Bitcoin Daily Show, correct? Is that
Yep,
the name?
that's right.
And I'm in there as much as I can get in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Well, listen, it was great connecting with you. I definitely appreciate what you're up to, what you do. I know, I see your passion, right? It's there. So that's awesome. I'd love that. Maybe we'll do this again. And I want to go into like why the money thing is so important to you, right? Like we didn't really
Yeah.
go there today, but what for to leave everybody though with one thing on the halving, what would you say if you would leave everybody with like one point with regards to the halving? What would it be?
I would say it's more important to understand why the halving than what is the halving. The what is the halving is simple. It's just the supply is getting cut in half. The why is way more important. It's because the monetary policy should not be decided by an arbitrary group of people who then has outsized influence over everybody else's wealth and well-being and livelihood, right? The whole reason why you have the halving is because the monetary policy should just be fixed. And if it's fixed, then that allows for us to build all sorts of financial instruments and improve the world. I just think it is probably the most important thing about Bitcoin is the fact that the supply is fixed. It's 21 million. It's digital scarcity, and that's how digital scarcity is enforced. Is the halving.
I love it, man. Well, appreciate you again. Thank you for your time. And yeah, we'll definitely do this again. And I'll see you on Spaces, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It's a good time.